Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Completely Oversimplifying Things That Probably Shouldn't Be. And today's topic is going to be quite fun and rather hands-on. So if you do feel like tagging along, following along, doing this yourself, I assure it's completely doable. We'll be using free tools. And even if you haven't seen the previous episodes, you can still catch up. So today's topic is actionable data warehouses, Lite. And I say Lite for a very good reason, because what we're going to do is not exactly a data warehouse, but it's going to simulate something similar and something that we can actually use in an early stage of our journey without having to go through a lot of hard technical setup or pay a fortune. So for today's goals, what we're actually going to do is we'll spin up an Airtable instance. That will take us just a couple of seconds, easy. We're going to design the 3 core tables that we need to operate. Our people table, our companies table, our subscription table. That these things are going to inform our CRM, who the people are, which companies they work at, and which companies have what type of subscriptions ongoing. Somewhere along the way, we're going to set up a one-way data extraction piece. So what you typically know as ETL, yeah? So normally what happens is you want to do one-way data extraction. Syncing data back is a separate topic, and that's exactly the reason why we will also be spinning up a Hightouch instance. Hightouch is a reverse ETL, and it's going to allow us to access our Airtable tables, yeah, and send that data back into HubSpot. Somewhere along the way, because we're working with contacts and companies, I want to help you understand how HubSpot's default create and associate companies function works, what takes precedence, what takes priority. Last but not least, we'll end this exercise with creating an actual active list of all of your customers, all of your users who are on a free plan, so that we can actually make it somewhat useful. Now, as a recap from last time, let's just have a quick look at our tech graph. What we'll be working on today is this green part. So we're going to spin up the data warehouse. We're going to connect it to a reverse ETL, send some data into HubSpot, and we'll also figure out a way how to get that same data out of HubSpot. All right. And before we jump into the actual fun things, I wanted to take the opportunity to do a little bit of advertising here. So last time we spoke, we knew that we needed an actual website. We knew that we needed some form of SaaS product to make this even remotely believable. So I'm happy to say that's exactly what we'll be doing. First and foremost, managed to spin up a quick Gatsby website. There's nothing here. It doesn't lead you anywhere, but we can use it as a live example. Now, a SaaS website without a SaaS application is nothing. So I'm also very happy to let you know that my very dear friend Nico has agreed to live stream and build a simple skeleton app for us. Basically, an app that has all the basic features like sign up, log in, log out, maybe some kind of like feature button so we can track events, choose subscriptions, that kind of thing. So if you're interested how that looks like, please follow Nipsuli on Twitch. It'll be in the links will be somewhere in the description, so don't worry about that. But awesome, let's get back to our own work. Okay, so the very first thing we want to be doing is actually getting that Airtable instance set up. Let's just head over to airtable.com, click sign up for free. Personally, I prefer to do with the Google login, but you do you. 1, 2, 3, and here we are. So this one is a table that I've already prepared for you, but we're going to start from 0 because that makes a lot more sense. Right, so if you've now signed up, you should be on this type of screen, and we're going to go ahead and add a new base. Let's just call this episode 3, whatever. And the very first thing that we agreed to do is to design our people table. Now, I use the word people because there are so many ways to describe people in sort of CRM language, and I prefer to use the most concrete one. So not users, not contacts, not leads, people, simple as that. In Airtable, it basically spins up a hybrid between a spreadsheet and a database. So they handle all the infrastructure for you, which is why it's so powerful, which is also the reason why it's so easy to get started with. Now, the very first thing we want to do in our brand new table when we design this is just delete the default stuff, and we need to decide what our unique primary identifier is. So this first column here is always primary. So it is used for lookup, and you want this to be unique as much as possible. Something like a ID or number combination of numbers, whatever. But for the purpose of this exercise, we're going to select email. Email addresses are unique enough for us to work with, and it's what we're going to select for this one. So great. And we know that people have things like, well, people have attributes. Things like first name, last name. Let's just add a few of them here. Okay. No, here we go. Okay, let's just delete a couple of these records. Let's just have the honor of being the very first person in our CRM, well, our data warehouse. So typically when you're working with databases and data warehouses, you don't really you can't really go inside of them in this manner and just write stuff. There's a lot more going on in the background, but it's kind of cool with this, with Airtable to practice, so we can see how we need to design our databases so that they work with the outgoing tooling. I digress. So there's a few more things we need to set up before we move along. We know that people work at companies, and one of the best ways to identify a company is a website URL. So that's something we would want to maintain on the contact level. So I sign up to a form and I tell you explicitly the website or the company I work for, website URL, much better than a company name. But see, Airtable has they have a built-in field type that does the validation for you. So if you select this, it will force you to add a valid URL. So you can't just type whatever you want. Okay, so that's our website. And there's a few more admin pieces that are very important. So we need to have a created at field. So just like it signifies when the record was created, like explicitly in the table. A lot of systems use this field to reference the record. Luckily, Airtable has a built-in function for this. So it's say created time. Yep. And as you can see, it's auto-generated us the value for there. Now, the second extremely important piece, arguably even more important than the create date, is a column called updated at. And this is supposed to signify whenever that particular row has changed in any manner, the time for that. This field is what systems like Hightouch or native syncs between Airtable and HubSpot use to sort of understand when the record has changed or who was the last to update. Because HubSpot, for example, will maintain their own updated at timing. And we will maintain our very own here. Again, luckily, Airtable provides us with a built-in function, so we don't have to think about this stuff. Simply select the last modified time, and as you can see, now we have a time there. So if I go now and if I stop being Richard and let's say I go Ricky, yeah, you'll notice that this piece here is now set to the actual time that I updated it. Anyway, okay, this is looking pretty good as our first table. Let's just real quick build the companies table, and then we'll spend a little bit more time on the subscriptions table. So companies, we have exact same story. Let's just get rid of some of these default columns. They are not helpful. We want the primary column to be something. Again, normally it is some form of ID, but for the purpose of this exercise, let's use the domain column. For this, we'll select the URL field type. It's not perfect for this use case because it will allow actual URLs to be placed here, but we will be able to be sure that this will only contain domains, and we'll get to that in a bit when we set up the one-way sync from HubSpot. But selecting URL, calling it domain for now, more than good enough. As you may have guessed, the next thing we need to know about a company is its name. Typically it is what it is. If you don't have a name, you can copy the domain value to it. Things like HubSpot actually, or some parts of HubSpot syncs rely on a company name. So it's just something we need to keep part of this. Same story as with the people's table. We need a created time and an updated time. Okay, let's just get rid of these. And let's just say it's this is the domain and we are reconfigured. At some point we'll probably want to add something like attributes in here. Just call it a country value. Don't link it. Plop. We'll get to these a bit later, but it is what it is. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the idea of a subscriptions table. So hopefully all we've done here today is something you don't necessarily need to build by yourself. It's data that should hopefully be in your product database. It's something you can simply create a copy of and maybe enrich, expand on, but fundamentally this type of stuff should come from your data engineering team. However, let's talk about the idea of subscriptions. So a subscription is an imaginary concept. We've made up. It's an agreement for me to buy from you. Now, is it the person that bought the subscription or is it the company that bought the subscription? It is something that you need to think about in the context of your own business. If you're predominantly selling to single users, then yeah, you don't need to worry about the company's piece. But then equally, if you're actually selling to companies, you'll want to sort of think about this stuff. Well, you want to relate the subscription to the company, not the individual person, because at the end of the day, you don't want to flag every single contact with a subscription value. Because what happens if one of them has free, one of them has the business enterprise flag? Then you'll get really confused in your segmentation. So we try to keep this type of stuff on a company level, or related to a company level. Let's see, same story here. Let's just rename this. So again, for this exercise, we'll use our trusty domain and URL combination. Okay, so something we want to add is what would be useful to know about our subscriptions. A status to begin with is something we want to do. And I mean, you could think about a status as being a yes, no, like active or not active. equally, your status could be a couple of options. So we're going to select a, we're not going to select a checkbox for this. Instead, we're going to go with a single select option. And the reason we're doing this is we want to create this in a way that in the future, if we do decide to change our minds with the status, we're not limited to the data type that we've made here. So let's see, our column is called status. It's a single select, so you can only select one option at a time. And let's see, what do we want? So we have our active subscriptions. Maybe we have suspended. So I don't know, maybe they needed to stop the subscription and maybe they want to come later, defer, whatever. And lastly, let's just say we have our churned ones. Those that are no longer with the company or buy from us. In addition to status, we're of course selling different kinds of subscriptions. So let's see what we got here. Same story, single select. For now, you can only select one. You can only have one subscription at a time. We of course have the free tier. We have a startup tier. Maybe we have a growth tier, and then lastly, we have the enterprise piece. Great. Just move these guys around, and now we have our subscriptions table. Now let's just see as an example. Again, our same trusty reconfigured here is going to be our test. Oh, what's happening here? Get rid of this empty. Nice. Okay, so status is, let's say it's active, and the type of we're on the growth plan. Great. So now we already have 3 core tables that we need, and we're ready to actually bring some of this stuff over to HubSpot.